Welcome back to my channel. I really wanted to get this video done before September 5th because that's when child life applications are due. And this video, I'm kind of talking all about like applying for child life internships and stuff like that, because that's what a lot of people want to see. I think a lot about like interviewing as well, because that's a big part of child life internships. You have to interview in order to get an intern. Cat blooper. Anyways, so that's like one of the biggest things is interviewing. Like that's kind of like what makes or breaks whether or not you're going to get the internship, along with some other things, but interviewing is like really the thing that like can solidify your spot in a program or not. First things first, I did want to like make a brief disclaimer. A lot of the things I'm going to recommend, they're expensive. Child life inherently has a lot of barriers to entry. And I think it's one of the main problems with the field at the moment is the fact that there are such large barriers to entry, especially for minorities, especially for people with a lower socioeconomic status who want to get into this field. I think there's a slightly too high barrier of entry in regards that you have to be willing to move somewhere to get an internship. You have to be willing to move somewhere to get a job. You have to be willing to move somewhere to get a practicum, and both a practicum and an internship are unpaid. So you have to figure out a way to fund your stay in a foreign city for a couple months where you're not getting paid and you don't have time to work another job. So just keep that in mind if you are kind of just checking this field out and you're not like super deep and decided that you want to do it. Just like be forewarned. So sorry, please ignore my cat. So how do you even get an interview? So interviewing is the second part of getting a child life internship. The first part is applying. So child life is kind of medieval in the fact that there's no like online application, so you literally have to print out your materials and mail them in physically to every single hospital that you want to apply to. Hopefully in the next couple of years that's going to change and make it easier on everybody and also like cheaper on it for everybody. But as of right now, that's the process. It kind of sucks. It takes a while. It's really long, it's really lengthy, and you have to be really detailed and diligent about all your materials that you're putting together. So how do you even get an interview? I wrote down you need to be at the top of the candidate pool. So this really depends on like which hospital you're applying to and like what area of the country you're applying to. But some hospitals get 200 applications for 2 internship spots. They can't interview every single person that applies to their program. So in order to even get an interview, you really need to like stand out, and so you really want to have like some diverse experiences on your application. You want to make sure that you are have a strong GPA, so that's really important, because if you most programs have like a minimum GPA, but if you have like a 4.0, obviously like that's really great. I think like a 3.5 is pretty competitive for child life programs. If you have like a 2.0 or something, like they're just not gonna trust that you have the developmental knowledge and background to be successful in their internship program. I'm not saying you don't have that knowledge, but they're just not gonna trust that based off of all your classes should be completed. So there are 10 required classes that you have to complete before you can apply for your internship. And some internship sites allow you to have like 1 class in progress or something like that, but I would highly recommend having all of your classes completed prior to applying for your internship. That's different than practicum. I think a lot of practicums allow you to have courses in progress, but for internships specifically, they like to see that all your child life courses are done. So maybe I had 1 in progress, and I like had a letter from my professor stating that I was meeting the requirements for the class, and I had to reach out to every single hospital and make sure that they accepted a course in progress form. So that was a lot of work. So it's a lot less work if all your courses are completed, and I would especially make sure that your child life course, like the child life theory specific course, is completed, because almost every single hospital you have to have that done before you even apply. So and that'll really help with interviewing and stuff anyways, so that's just a good recommendation. I recommend that you complete more than the minimum of volunteer hours. So I think each hospital sets their own. Like it's been a couple of years since I've applied, so I think it's pretty similar, but each hospital sets their own minimum number of required hours, so try to have more than that, because that'll make you stand out on the application. So think of it this way: every single person has to have the minimum. So do you want to be just like everybody else, or do you want to have more than the minimum? You know, not that it's like definitely like quality over quantity, If you have 1,000 hours but you didn't really learn anything or do anything, that's not going to help. But lots of hours and quality experiences will really make you stand out. Regarding practicum, I think most hospitals at this point require a practicum prior to applying for their internship. I'm not sure about like practicum being in progress versus not being in progress. For that, you'll have to check each individual hospital's website. But I'd recommend having a practicum completed, 2 preferably, if you really want to be competitive. I think most people that have multiple practicums done are like the very top of the application pool for internships. And again, this is just from my experience, but so at least 1 practicum, 2 if you can. Like my school offers a practicum as part of our curriculum, so I did that plus another outside practicum at a different hospital. So that I had a lot of hours in practicum, which I think helped with my applications. And strong letters of recommendation. If you have like a child life program at your school, make sure like whoever is the director of that program, you're on their good side. Make sure that they know you really well and can speak to your strong qualities and your skills and stuff like that. Because strong letters of rec can really make or break your application. If they get an application and it's just a super generic letter of recommendation, they're gonna think this person didn't know them very well. They're not like a very like outstanding, memorable student, so why would we want them? You know what I mean? So strong letters of recommendation, make sure people know you well. I think make good connections. I think those are always important to have because you never know who's gonna know somebody that you wanna know. So, so how do you prep for the interview? So congratulations, you got a call, you got an email, they want to interview you. So how do you prepare for your interviews? So definitely look up child life interview questions online. There are a ton of examples. A bunch of different schools have them online. There's a bunch of different like Google Drive files I think that people share around that have a bunch of questions and stuff like that. So definitely just like get on the internet, look up some practice questions. Make sure you're comfortable using things like distraction and assessment and developmentally appropriate. They like to hear those words, those little key words. If you can sink those into your interview, they're gonna be like, this girl knows what she's talking about, rather than if you're using them like in the wrong context, you know what I mean? So like make sure you are practicing and like comfortable saying different words. I made like a sheet that had like a bunch of different experiences that I could remember. So like when I was volunteering here and I interacted with a 3-year-old boy and we were playing and he had a bad play session, like how did that go and how did I overcome that? So it was easier just like have in my mind just like scenarios I knew I could reference off the bat, because a lot of the questions are like scenario based questions and they'll be like, tell me about a time when you did this, and so you'll kind of want to have things like quickly on hand in your brain to refer to. So usually like typical job interview like questions, so like what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, I got like what kind of animal would you be, stuff like that. You can look up those kinds of questions too and just be prepared to answer some like tell me about yourself questions and like know what you're gonna say, and just like know how to answer each like general type of question. So there's usually like scenario questions, preparation style questions, so they'll be like, how would you prepare a child for this? And then they'll have like assessment questions like, what's your assessment of this child, what's this child's developmental ability. They usually do like some theory questions as well, so list like pick a theory and list all the stages of development. And so I always like to have like I always knew like the main theories like Piaget, Erikson, stuff like that. But if they asked like my favorite theory, I would give like an offhand theory like the Lazarus and Folkman coping, stress and coping theory, because it's not just like Erikson, Piaget, whatever everyone else says. Next, the types of interviews, really interesting. So there's usually multiple rounds of interviews, which don't let it scare you. It's really not that bad. There's usually only about 2 rounds of interviews, sometimes 3, I don't know, like at the really big hospitals if they really want to like weed people out. So usually the first round is something like a phone screening, or like a video submission or something like that, where they'll give you some questions and then it's like kind of like basic questions more so. It might be like a couple of theory questions, tell me about yourself questions, stuff like that, and just kind of assessing like your basic developmental knowledge if you're competent or not. And then the second round is usually like a way more in-depth, like hour-long interview where I have like a lot more questions and they're really assessing like your knowledge of child life, your readiness for an internship, your ability to be taught, all that kind of stuff. So there's definitely multiple rounds. Be prepared for that. If you don't make it past the first round, that's okay. I always try to tell people it's also important that you like the program that you're going to. So like make sure you keep notes of like what programs you liked, what kind of vibes you got from people and stuff like that, so that you can, if you do end up getting multiple offers, which is like the dream, you can kind of rank them in your preference as well. So you end up somewhere that you like and you're happy at as well. And types of interviews for final round. So there's traditional interviews where you like sit at a table and there's like a couple people and they like go around asking you questions, stuff like that, like a typical job interview. But then there's also this new format which is called MMI, multiple mini interviews, and you like go into separate rooms and there's like an interview in each room, and so it's like a bunch of like smaller interviews, so just be prepared for that. That could be a thing. I had 2 of those, and then I don't know if this applies now because of coronavirus and stuff like that, but when I applied, we were asked to come into a lot of interviews, and so that's kind of a big question for people, is like, do I fly to the interview? Do I drive there? Do I go in person? Do I ask for a Skype interview? Honestly, I truly don't think it really matters what you do. I think if I liked going to the in-person ones because I could get like a better feel on people and like see the area and see where I would live for a couple months and stuff like that. But I only went to 2 different in-person interviews, because I just like couldn't reasonably afford to fly like to so many interviews. A lot of places try to like keep an equal playing field, and they'll just do like all interviews like via Skype or something like that, and I'm sure that's probably how they're doing them now because of coronavirus. So this might not even apply like this year or next year or whenever you're watching this. What are they looking for in your answers? So this is how you actually like get the internship. So how do you answer the questions appropriately, so that you can really stand out in your interview and they really want you as their intern. Developmental knowledge. I think this is key. Definitely have a good solid foundation of developmental knowledge. Try to include development in every single answer you give about a kid. Obviously, if they're like, where are you from, you don't need to like include development, but if they ask you about like how you prioritize kids or like your assessment of this child, make sure you include development, because that's what we're trained in and that's what our background's in, so they're really looking for that in every answer. I would say know your child life knowledge, so know what distraction is, have some basic distraction techniques in your brain that you can like refer to. So be like, for an infant I would do this, for a toddler I would do this, for a school-age kid I would do this, for a teenager I would do this. Just things you can refer to quick and easy, because they might ask you how would you distract a 14-year-old boy, and like you have to have something on hand like quickly. Definitely like have those things in your mind. Know your child life knowledge, know how you would like prepare like an IV and stuff like that. They usually aren't going to ask you like to do like some crazy procedure that you've never heard of. They'll probably ask you how you would prepare a kid for like an IV or like some kind of procedure like that. So just know like the basic steps of preparation, and like make sure you're talking in using child-friendly words and stuff like that, and you're addressing their development, and you're saying it's like, I'm doing this and this is why. Like that's really useful, if that makes sense, because then like they know that you're on the right track, and like you're not just like throwing something out there for no reason, but you actually like know why you would do this type of intervention with this type of child. Theories, like I said, make sure you know your theories. They're gonna ask you a theory question. It's always there. Just know your theories really, really well. There's a lot of child life resources online that like give you like summaries of like all the theorists and stuff like that. So just like make a chart, look at a chart, do something, know your theories. Having real life examples, make sure you have a couple of those on hand. Like I said, I had like a couple for each age, and like one that went good, one that went bad, and like a well and a sick kid. So just like stuff like that, just like things that you can reference quickly. If they like ask you something, so like say, what would you do for a child that's in traction, and you don't know what traction is, you can ask them, hey, actually I'm not too sure, I'm not really familiar with traction, I haven't seen that on any of the units that I saw in practicum, would you mind like explaining to me briefly like what that is, if that's allowed? And they'll probably explain it to you, because you have to remember at the end of the day, you're a student and you're not expected to know every single thing. That's why you're applying for an internship, because you aren't a child life specialist yet. So they don't expect you to know every single thing. So asking questions is good, make sure you're respectful, but that shows that you take initiative and you really want to learn. Ask questions at the end. So like if you're, like I said, it's really a match between you and the program. You want to be happy at your program. So ask things like, how many interns do you guys take? What type of units do you guys have? How long is each rotation? Do you have a say in your rotations, or are they just like assigned to you? Do they have professional development and in-services? Are they accredited? Are they an accredited internship site? What types of projects do they expect of their interns? What are they looking for in an intern? I think that's a great question. Just things like that, anything you're curious about. It shows that you are interested in that program. Another tip I just thought of, make sure that you kind of do a little bit of research about the hospital, because they'll probably ask you why this hospital. So just go on the website, look up their mission statement, their vision statement, stuff like that, just to see what the hospital's mission is, and kind of incorporate that into why this hospital, because they'll be impressed. Some places schedule interviews really early, so you'll send in your applications, and then 2 days later you'll hear back asking for a phone screening or something. Some places schedule them the week before offer day. So just an FYI, if you haven't heard, don't freak out. There's a lot of programs that just take their time, because they are full-time child life specialists and have a full patient load on top of being asked to interview and going to meetings and all these other things that they're doing. So just be patient, they'll get back to you, I promise. What to wear, definitely business casual, not business casual, business professional. I think I wore a suit, a little blazer and a top, and some work pants. I don't know what they're called, but yeah, so I wore that and some nice shoes. And someone asked, how do you keep track of all your hours? So another tip that I have is, if you are starting out your child life journey now and you're getting all these extracurricular experiences and you're volunteering at hospitals and all that stuff, make sure you keep track of your hours as you're going. It's a lot easier to keep track of them as you're going than it is to go back and calculate from when you're trying to apply, from 4 years ago. You can't remember how many hours or Saturdays you spent at the food bank 4 years ago. I don't know. So the ACLP actually has a volunteer hour form they ask you to fill out for each site. So whenever you finish volunteering at a site and you're done or whatever, and you've moved on to a new volunteering experience, maybe ask them to fill out that form and then just make a copy or scan it. I would just scan it into my computer and have it on file. And so then when I went to apply, I already had all of my verification forms already filled out, and I didn't have to worry about it. They were already signed, dated, everything like that, and it was a breeze. So I highly recommend doing that to keep track of all your hours, especially if you are early on in your child life journey. So then I did get some questions in my Q&A, which I was really excited about. So what classes did I take in high school and in college to become a child life specialist? So I don't think you should worry too much about high school classes. I think in high school you should focus on graduating and getting into a good college. I think that's what's important in high school. And also just being a teenager, you're never going to be a teenager again. So focus on being a teenager, having fun, setting yourself up for a good college career. And then once you get to college is when your preparation can really start for child life. So definitely volunteering at hospitals and stuff like that, any work with well kids, sick kids, special needs kids, anything like that, those are all great. Stuff like nanny and babysitting is cool, but sometimes if you're paid for things, they can't count as volunteer hours, so just be wary of that as well. Then volunteering at children's hospitals is always great. And then as far as classes that I took in college, there are, to become a child life specialist, there are 10 classes that you have to take in addition to having a bachelor's degree. And so I did those while getting my bachelor's degree. So if you go on childlife.org and go to prospective child life specialists, they have the list of all the 10 classes. So those are the classes that you need to take in college if you want to be a child life specialist and be eligible to apply for child life internships. So childlife.org is a super great resource. They have a bunch of information on there. You can always reach out to people at the ACLP office and they'll answer any questions that you have, as well as you can reach out to me and I'll answer any specific to you questions that you have. And then someone else asked, did I become a member of the ACLP to get slightly cheaper exam fee? And also, how did I calculate volunteer hours for child life practicum and internship apps? So did I become a member of the ACLP? Yes. I recommend doing it anyways because you can put it on your application and it just shows that you're really dedicated to the field. There's a student fee. It's really not that expensive and it is worth it because you do get cheaper exam fees. So highly recommend doing it. I think it was we were recommended to do it in my child life class, to have it on your resume to show that you're really dedicated to child life. So And then how did I calculate volunteer hours for the practicum and internship apps? Like I said, it's easier to keep track of them as you go along than if you're like waiting till the very end to keep track of them. So I recommend getting your verification forms filled out as you complete different experiences. But if you didn't do that, what I did was like try to go back in my brain and think of any volunteer experience I did, and then like really just try to figure out, like I'd go back in like my planners and figure out how many hours I spent there. And then also you have to get them signed, so you can always reach out to the organization that you volunteered with, and they might have like a record of your hours there, or you can say, hey, I think I volunteered like 30 hours with you guys, would you mind signing this form? And usually they'll sign it for you. So yeah, so I hope this was helpful. I did want to get this video up because I think people are going to be interviewing for child life positions really soon. So good luck to everybody that's interviewing. I wish you all the best. Everything happens for a reason. You will end up at a program that is you are meant to be at, and it will all work out. It might take a couple of tries. That's okay. Don't get discouraged. Use every single opportunity as a learning experience to better yourself and better yourself as a child life specialist. So I truly wish you guys all the best. Please leave a comment down below if you have any questions and video requests, anything like that. Subscribe if you like my channel. So I wish you guys all the best, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys.